This is an older restoration. I didn't do it, I bought it this way. And since I've owned it for about 5 years now. And since I've owned it, I've been trying to do a lot of upgrades, repairs, and adding things to the Jeep that should be on the Jeep, but when they did the restoration, it wasn't included in the restoration. And one of them is the hand throttle cable. So I want to get it installed this fall so that it's ready to go in the spring. That's this episode of Rust to Resurrection, installing this hand throttle cable into the CJ2. This looks to be a pretty simple project, not a lot of tools, not a lot of process to this. I just need to run the cable from the dash through the firewall and then connect it directly to the carburetor. I do need a few things. Obviously I need the throttle cable. It says throttle right here on the cable. I need a couple of rubber grommets because they're missing on the firewall. So from that original restoration, they didn't replace all the rubber grommets. Some of the ones that they did replace, they're all dried out and cracked. So I'm going to replace the 2 grommets. There's actually 2 holes, one for the throttle cable and one for the choke cable. So I have to remove the choke cable. I'll explain all that to you in a minute. And so when I do that, I'm going to put a new grommet in there, and then I'll put the grommet in for the throttle cable as well. I have to have a method for attaching the end of the cable to the linkage on the carburetor. I'll show you all that when we get to it. But what was missing, or what appears to be missing, is a way to actually clamp it in place. So I had a friend of mine make a little steel set block with an Allen head screw so I can clamp the cable. It's really tiny. I'll show you that when we get into it. This should be a real simple project. You know those famous last words, this should be a simple project. When you look at the manual for the CJ2A, it shows the location of the throttle cable to the left of the dash light and the choke control to the right of the dash light. Now when they did the restoration on this Jeep, they positioned the choke control to the left and they never reinstalled the throttle cable. So what I need to do for this project is to remove the choke cable from its current location, move it to the right of the dash light for its proper location, and then I can install the throttle cable in its correct location. Now the first thing I have to do before removing the choke cable is I have to detach it from the carburetor. Now there's 2 points that I need to go after. The first thing I have to go after is where the flexible cable itself is attached. And the second thing I have to do is to detach the wire cable itself from the choke. Finishing that, I have to go under the dash to unbolt that cable. That's not going to be fun because there's not a lot of room under there to work. It's just, I'm going to be all cramped up. So anyway, let's go ahead and get this done. These are both 5/16 bolts, so it's really simple to get them loose. All right, as often happens, things don't work out the way you had planned. So it turns out when they installed the choke cable originally in the restoration, they cut the cable to just the right length for that location. I moved it over to the right of the gauge cluster, and the cable won't reach the choke. Shit. All right, so let's finish that throttle install. So when they supply the cables, they supply plenty of length. In this case, they've added an extra foot for what I need here. So I need to cut that off, and I need to cut two things. The first thing I got to do is cut this spiral shielding that goes around the outside of the solid cable. Then once I've got that figured out, I can cut that steel rod as well. We're just going to use a set of dikes, and what I'm going to do with the dikes is just going to come across. I've already marked where it has to be attached to the holder. I'm just going to bend this really lightly with a set of dikes. So that separates the spiral cable. Once I've done that, then I can find a place where I can snip. There we go. So you can see I've got a lot of extra throttle rod here. So, all right, now I got to get it attached to the carburetor. So I've got all this extra cable. I'm going to cut a little bit of this off just to give me a little bit of room to play here. So this spiral cable has got to go through this bracket over here, and that's going to hold that in place. So the first thing I need to do is loosen that up. Get that cable attached right there. There we go. Alright, so I've got the spiral cable attached to that holder. Now I need to come down through the throttle linkage itself with the steel cable. This throttle linkage has to move freely on this rod, but at the same time I need to be able to attach the end of the cable so that when I pull it out, it pulls it forward, but it has to come back under its own power. Alright, so here's my little set block. The through hole matches the hole of this solid rod, and then there's an Allen head screw we'll use to clamp that rod to the steel. Alright, so we've got all the hookups done. The throttle's attached to the dash. The spiral cable is attached to the carburetor, and then the keeper is attached to the bottom of the throttle. And what happens is when you pull the throttle back, you can see how it moves the throttle linkage. But the spring has a retract, so the spring, or the throttle return spring, brings the throttle back where it belongs. So in order to keep that in whatever position that you have in mind, the throttle actually has a friction lock. So you turn that friction lock and it holds the throttle in position. When you're ready, then you simply release the friction lock and the throttle goes back home again. So you can set it at any position you want, depending on how much throttle you want. The last thing I have to do is add this rubber grommet. So the only one I'm going to do this time is the grommet for the throttle cable, and I'll do the one for the choke when I get the new choke cable in. So this is a split grommet. So it splits and it comes in half. It also has a recess around the outer edge of the OD of the grommet. So I'm going to add a little bit of oil just in around that rubber split or that rubber recess around the OD, and hopefully that'll lubricate this enough that I can get it around into the metal of the Jeep firewall. It fits good, fits like a glove. All right, that looks nice. All right, so let me clean this up a little bit, and then we'll close this video out. All right, so this was a fun project, but it was a frustrating project all at the same time. I didn't get to finish it like I'd hoped. The original choke cable wasn't long enough, so I need to order another one. I'll show you that in the future. Fun because I got the throttle cable installed. I have fond memories of that back when I was a kid. Frustrating also because there's absolutely no room to work under that dash. The pedals were in the way, the stick shifts were in the way, half of the wiring and the gauges were in the way, so it was really a little bit of a trick trying to work around all those parts and pieces that were under there. But we got it done. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like it. Subscribe to my channel, ring the bell so you get notified the next time I post a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.